I have had an effect on the religious practices of many cultures throughout history. A lot of Muslims were also Zoroastrian pagans. This list goes on. This is a common theme in the history of the world. A nation that is Christian or Muslim, on the other hand, can change religions and sides. Except for colonial powers, these kinds of things have not been written about very often in history. We'll talk about this today, though. One of the kingdoms that stands out is one of the most calorie-dense in medieval England. Could they have become Muslims? The idea of converting to Islam came up twice in medieval England, even though it was very rare. In fact, we will talk about these two events in the movie we are going to watch today. We will look into the historical process, defend the claims, and decide if England really did convert to Islam. We will assess it if we are ready. In the 1960s, the first historical mace and the King of England started AV 100 in England. These things happen in both cases. In the 12th century, Henry II had a lot of power over Europe. He ruled parts of Ireland and Scotland from 1154 to 1189, and he made England more powerful in France. England became stronger than it had been before thanks to the changes he made to culture and the economy. Still, In 1161, a series of events began that would, well, change the course of history. After the death of his archbishop in 1161, he chose Thomas, the Chancellor of England, who was one of his close palace allies, to help him control both. Not long after this appointment, things started to go wrong. When he got to Bectora, he broke off his relationship with the king and refused to follow his orders. He stayed at the palace, changed his way of life, and eventually became the church's holy defender. He made himself the enemy. Henry's plan to take over the church was stopped in this way. This fight was called the Mehmet argument, or the bet quarrel in English history. The argument between the two had become personal and spread all over the world. Henry was angry with the continent and refused to change his mind. Bagot, on the other hand, was a preacher who was very ambitious and political. Neither of them would go back. He tried to get help from other European strongholds and groups on this issue. During the whole process, Pope Alexander III kept in touch with both the king and the Pope. Even though he didn't say it out loud, he didn't like what the king was doing and didn't listen to the Duke's requests. Because of this, the king's feelings about Cognac got worse. He finally wrote to the Pope and said that he would accept the invitation from his people to be the Archbishop of Canterbury instead of his daughter. This threat was very serious at the time. Even though this is a threat, what does the letter really mean? Who is Nurettin, and what name could he give the king? Nurettin Mahmut was a powerful leader in the area. He was the Sultan of a growing empire in Syria and Iraq that went far beyond Harry's kingdom. He fought the Crusaders in his district and all over the world, sending messages to the kings and queens of faraway lands, asking them to convert to Islam. Nurettin and Henry never met in person. Through all of his letters, Nurettin convinced Harry, the most powerful ruler of his time, to become a Muslim. He wrote to the Pope about accepting Nurettin's call, which means converting to Islam. This could make things worse between England and the Catholic Church. Since he may not have converted to Islam, the problem may still not be fixed. The king's knights were responsible for the murder of Thomas Becket in 1170, which was one of the most important events in English history. He was given it. Because of this, he stopped threatening other people. You know, Henry was also known for having pretty moderate views on Islam. He actually brought some really smart folks from Sicily, Italy and Andalusia to his fortress, where he took the opportunity to learn Arabic from them. There's something quite remarkable about the Arab culture and the wealth of knowledge it has passed down through the ages. He spent a lot of money to have several Arabic texts translated into Latin, since he had a real knack for linguistics and, well, a deep appreciation for intellectual accumulation. And even though Eastern culture was all the rage in Europe at the time, none of these influences ever managed to persuade him to convert to Islam. About 50 years after Henry, the German Emperor Frederick II became very skilled in Arabic himself and even invited Arab artists and scholars to his palace. Still, he remained a Christian from the day he was born until the day he died, just like Henry. Now the part about Henry II. We already know that it's time to do something. The King of England is, well, weaker and less capable than his ancestors in the early 1300s. To better understand the way forward, it's important to quickly look back at the past. King John of England spent a lot of money on the Third Crusade looking for a fruit. Richard had to go back to England without successfully taking Jerusalem because, honestly, the mission ended badly. He never stopped having bad luck. Holy Roman Emperor Henry VI kidnapped him on his way back. And England wanted 150,000 silver marks, which was equal to 2 years' worth of the kingdom's profits, to let him go. After Richard was killed in 1199 by an untrained archer, fighting against the King of France, his brother John became the leader. The new king took over a country that was in debt, which caused problems for him throughout his reign. John was in charge of losing almost all of France's land, including Normandy from 1200 to 1214. The Pope kicked him out of the church in 1212 and told him not to call himself king. His reputation took a hit because of his mistakes in foreign policy and ties to the church. Dear brother, his reputation would be hurt. Even though the people loved Richard the Lionheart, and he had become a hero before he died, the people who were involved didn't like him. After his barons rebelled, the king had to sign the Magna Carta, which gave the nobles a kind of sovereignty that he didn't want to give them. You can tell he was in bad shape. He lost his things, had a bad relationship with the church, and had to give up his power. He needed a new ally, but no one in Europe wanted to help him with his mission. As you might expect, the other European kings didn't want to show their support for a king who had been humiliated and kicked out of the church. The way they finally made an alliance with Sultan Muhammad, who ruled southern Spain and northern Africa. These raids were a threat from northern Christian kingdoms in France and the Iberian Peninsula during these years. My sweetheart, the timing of his vows was just right. He insisted on being there at the right times. Sultan al-Nasser personally accepted King Joe's embassy to Andalusia in the year 212. Ice cream. Robert, an old Jew, was the smart leader of EYT. Robert's message was delivered in the following way. If Muslims worked together to help King John get his lands back, he might become a Muslim. He would have been an Apple fan for a long time. What did Muhammad say about this offer? Robert was rude and praised the king during important meetings, but Robert told El-Nasser in private meetings that the king was a dishonest ruler. Because of this word was never said, and the whole story comes from one source. Nurettin Mahmut wrote the story 20 years after the events happened to make it funny. There is no record of the attempt to form an alliance in any of the sources we have today. How much can we trust this story? First and foremost, it seems like a natural thing that no other news outlets have covered the story. Historians sometimes defend those in power. People might change what they know about their wrongdoings, or leave out things they don't like. But historians wouldn't have done that for John because, well, his subjects never liked him. The King of Metro Paris really hates us, which affects our approach, and my opinions about him seem to be fair. My words may seem crazy, but the king can shake hell. It doesn't matter if he smoked. So, what would happen? Honestly, this needs more research. Even if the kings were hopeful, it would be very hard for England to become Islamic, and we can imagine how we would feel, right? To start, it's normal for people to react. Even if the people of England accepted Islam, it is unlikely that they would give up their Christian customs. The English class was started by people who were already against Dona. They would almost certainly get support from the public. Because of this, a civil war seemed likely. Even if the king won, he wouldn't have enough time to set up the new religious rules. The Catholic Church will also respond. The Pope will kick the king out of the church, and European countries will be told to fight England. England will be expected to attack. It looks like England will be the target of a crusade because of what has happened in the past. A crusade in southern France in the 14th century almost wiped out the Cathars. If England had become Muslim, the Pope probably would have used this power against it. If they had worked hard to convert England to Islam, it is very unlikely that they would have reached their goals.